President Biden is calling the passage of his $1.2 trillion infrastructure package a monumental step forward for the nation.
Now, that measure was passed in Congress late Friday with the help of several Republican lawmakers who went against their party and supported this bill.
Nicole Malliotakis, New York congresswoman and one of 13 GOP members who voted for the bipartisan bill, joining us this morning. So, Congresswoman, why did you buck your party and vote for this infrastructure bill?
This bill is good for New York City. It is good for the country. It is cover-to-cover infrastructure. Nearly half the money is going to highways, roads, and bridges. The other half, the $550 billion, is going to real hard infrastructure projects that we so desperately need in my community and across New York. Coastal resiliency, our sewer system, which we saw we need to increase the capacity. We saw that firsthand during Ida. You know, the highways, the subway signals that are still, in some cases, operating on pre-World War II equipment. We need to make sure we modernize our subways into communication-based train control. These are the things that people actually pay taxes for, those basic infrastructure upgrades that we desperately need that are not just good for New Yorkers, but good for our national economy.
Gotcha.
The trillions that we lose in GDP by not investing in infrastructure, I think is something that everyone needs to also think about. And I want to just point out one thing. There are two separate bills, because I know a lot of people who are upset with my vote don't understand that there are two separate bills.
I'm just wondering, Congresswoman, are you getting backlash? There's talk that some of the Republicans who voted for this are getting backlash, they're getting threats. Are you getting that?
Well, look, there's some people that don't understand that there are two separate bills. And a lot of the things that they are upset about are actually in the Build Back Better spending bill, which the progressives have been pushing, that I am also opposed to, and I've been one of the leaders against. That includes the amnesty and the illegal immigration and some of the, the IRS agents snooping in your accounts. I oppose that measure and will continue to fight it. And by the way, I believe by passing the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we've taken away the leverage from the progressives to try to jam that bill down our throats. Now there's going to be a negotiation. That spending bill, a budget is due by December 3rd, and we're going to go through that process now. But we've significantly taken away the leverage from those who were trying to hold the infrastructure bill hostage. And I think that's incredibly important. Also, people should know, it was Donald Trump that said we needed to invest in $1 trillion in infrastructure. And so, I'm happy to be supporting this, which is so needed in our country. And I think it's also just important to point that it is cover-to-cover infrastructure.
So let's talk.
There has been some information out there, unfortunately.
Well, what about the money that's going here towards, the people of New York, the things to fix here? You're having almost $10 billion, going towards the MTA. Now, because you're getting that, would that maybe offset some of the congestion pricing? Because a lot of people are up in arms about that still.
Yeah, it absolutely should, and it should prevent further toll increases. And I still continue that if the state continues to push forward with congestion pricing, the people of Staten Island who already pay a toll to connect to the rest of the city should be exempt, and I will continue to fight for that exemption. But there's also so many other significant things here for Staten Island, for Southern Brooklyn. I'm going to be pushing forward to try to get this funding to be used to finally complete the HOV lane on Staten Island, to stop some of the flooding issues that they have in the Belt Parkway in Brooklyn. There are some serious issues that we need to have addressed. Particularly coastal resiliency projects, and making sure any increase due to supply chain issues or inflation that could be addressed to make sure the seawall is once and for all completed. And so I think there's a lot of good things here. Look, New York's getting 10% of this bill, 10% of the funding in this bill is going to New York State. So I don't know how any person in New York City could oppose this bill. Unfortunately,
obviously, we do know that it sounds great. We want those additions. We need anything that's brand new to be completed, that's old. However, are you a bit concerned because you have, as of right now, 1 million more job openings than people that are looking for jobs? This bill is supposed to provide 20 million jobs. We can't even get people to, get the supply chain going. So how do you plan to maybe get all this done? Are you worried about finding people to actually do this work, to get everything brand new and new roads, all those things?
Well, I think you're talking about a skilled trade. I think these are different types of jobs, and the people who are going to be being put to work are people who are in the skilled trades, laborers, those who are particularly trained for that kind of work. So I think it's a little bit different, and that is why I do oppose the President Biden's Build Back Better spending plan, because I think it just further disincentivizes people to return to work, and I think it creates more of a labor shortage by expanding entitlements, expanding welfare without work requirements. So that is why I continue to fight against that.
And in that Build Back Better is the SALT reduction, which would obviously help people in New York. So you're going to vote against Build Back Better, even with the SALT being part of that?
Rosanna, I am one of the founders of the SALT caucus. I very much support restoring SALT, but if it's going to be tied with a bunch of other nonsense, I just simply won't be able to support that package. What good is it to give taxpayers back some money with one hand if we're going to cost them tons of other money with the other hand? So I think that, we have to see how this debate continues and what ends up in that spending bill, what's taken out. We've seen significant changes already. Remember, it started as $3.5 trillion, went down to $1.7 trillion. Some of the policy has been taken out, but I can't support a bill that continues to give money to those who are in the country illegally, that looks to implement amnesty, that looks to further allow people to look into your bank account if you make a small, $10,000 worth of transactions a year, which is mostly a lot of people, 87,000 more IRS agents. Talk about Big Brother. Those are things I cannot support.
Okay, so, are you ready to go up against the squad, AOC? Because I know you said you voted on this particular infrastructure package because you were tweaking AOC a little bit. Now she's looking forward to the Build Back Better, and you're going to vote no against that? Is that a tweak against AOC?
Well, AOC voted against the infrastructure bill. She did New York City a disservice, and we'll probably be at odds on the other bill as well. But I'll say that we've significantly taken away her leverage, which is why she voted against the infrastructure bill, because she knows by removing infrastructure from the discussion, they are going to really see that spending bill lessen both in cost and I think in policy. And so I think we dealt a blow to AOC while at the same time delivering good things for the people of New York City.
Hey, before you go, Congresswoman, can we talk about it? Because Bianca and I have been trying to figure out what really is the truth on this. $450,000 supposed payment per person to illegal immigrants who were separated from their families under the Trump administration. The president at one point said that's not happening. Then it was walked back by his people. What is the story on that?
Well, it seems that the president does not know what his administration is doing unless he's just simply lying to the American people. I think that there has been some talk between the administration with ACLU in the middle to give these payments, which is such a slap in the face to the American people who work hard every day. They pay taxes, and they don't expect their government to be spending money this way. And it's also an attack on those who came to this country legally and followed the rules and never asked for anything, like my parents who fled Cuba and my father from Greece. They worked hard, they contributed to society, and they never asked for anything from this government except for opportunity and the American dream. And so I think we're going to, look, we have legislation we just introduced to stop this payment going to those who are in the country illegally. Imagine the president and this administration wanting to reward people who broke our laws, who disrespected our border. We are 100% opposed to this, united against it, and we will work very hard to stop it.
And then the flights coming in the middle of the night to, White Plains, dropping off people. We're hearing their children, but they're, here illegally, and we have no idea what's happening when these kids get to our area. I mean, do we know any more about these clandestine flights in the middle of the night?
Yeah, that's why I wrote the Transparency and Migration Act, which I hope my colleagues will look at and pass, because it requires the administration to let everyone know the number of migrants that have come, where are they being sent to, is there anybody in there with a criminal conviction? People need to know what is going on, and this administration can't continue to hide this information. Look what happened in Florida. Someone who marched in saying that they were here as a child ended up being a 24-year-old who then murdered somebody in Florida. We can't allow this stuff to happen, and I think we need to secure the border. The money is there from President Trump. President Biden has decided to cancel those contracts. Meanwhile, we're still paying for it. And we also need the Remain in Mexico policy to be put back in place because it worked. It worked, so we could vet these people properly and know who's coming over. And I think that that is the most important thing. The amount of drugs that is coming to New York and killing people. You saw record numbers of fentanyl deaths in New York, and the DEA is telling us it is coming over the southern border. So the president has to stop taking the sides of the drug cartels and start taking the side of the American people. It is the right thing to do, and I don't see why it's so controversial.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. Keep us in your thoughts while you're in D.C. We appreciate it.